What's happening, guys? Today's another day on the channel, and today what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make the rear subframe for the tractor. We have the tool to make it so that we have square edges in the back, and we're going to try to just get it so that it works right. I watched in a video before of a different YouTuber who is like a welder guy, that you don't just weld all the edges together. You kind of do a cross over, and then you go to the other side, and then you flip it, and then you go to the other side and make sure that it's all just square, and so that the whole thing doesn't warp, because if you just start welding certain areas, it's just going to warp your whole square tube box that you're trying to make, and then you're going to have to like bend it back, cut the welds, or do something like that. So let's go ahead and start trying to weld this thing together, cut it up, do what we need to do, and then weld all of it together. So let's go ahead. We're actually gonna go over to Chris's shop real quick. We're gonna use his chop saw, because he has a chop saw. I forgot about that when I was cutting up the front and doing some front stuff, that we can do that and make it right with like the perfect 45-degree angles, or we could just say screw it and we can just make squares and just cut it right where our marks are there. So I think we're probably just gonna take the easy route and just do the squares, and then later on I'll probably have my friend Jeff come through and he can make the 45 so that it'll probably be a little stronger or something like that. So let's take a walk over to Chris's shop, use the chop saw, cut all this up, come back over here, weld it up, and then see if we can get the rear subframe in today, and then possibly see if we can get the front knuckles on, and then of course we're gonna do the rear of the motor mount so that we can have the motor on there and it's all fully bolted down and everything like that. So we got a little bit of a work ahead of us today, so let's go ahead and start just jumping right into this. Okay, so we're over at Chris's shop now. We're working with the chop saw right here, and we're gonna cut the first mark at 12, the second mark is at 12, the third one's at 10, and then the next one's at 10 too. So there's 2 10s, 2 12s. And we're gonna go back to the shop. We're gonna use our metal square, put that into the corners, tack up a couple of the corners, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start trying to weld some of this together so that it won't flex on us. And then we're gonna go through and we're gonna put this onto we're gonna put the axle onto it, and then we're gonna weld it all together. So let's go ahead and try to do this up now. Okay, so a thing that I realized is that my rear box that I'm making here, the actual gap between where the first bearing is and where the second bearing is actually bigger than I had originally intended on it. So it's actually bigger than 10 inches. So we won't be able to use the 10-inch marks. We actually have to go to Lowe's and get another piece of this steel so that we can actually make the rest of this. And just so that we can have like a gusset or something that goes through the center of it to hold it even better. So I gotta make a trip to Lowe's real quick to go get more of this. It's actually 16 and like a little over a half. So we're gonna do it at like 16 and I don't know, three quarters or something like that, just to make it so that it's big enough to have overhang, and so that this thing will actually sit right. So let's go ahead and make a trip to Lowe's real quick. We'll come back and then we'll go ahead and cut up what we need to, and then we're gonna use a gusset for the center of it. So let's go ahead and do that. So here we go, we got our box pretty much mocked up right here. And then we have our pole right here for our gusset. I cut it too short. So if you take this and you put this into here, it's just a little too short. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna weld this piece here back together. And then what I'll do is I'll cut like a little square out over it, and then I'll put a piece over top of it so that it just welds it nicely together there. And then we're going to go ahead and cut our V into this so that it'll go into this corner, and it'll sit just like the one on the other side over there, which is not perfect, but hey, we're still calculated winging it, and that corner is off. So once we get it all nice and squared up, it'll go together pretty nicely there. So let's go ahead and start tacking a couple of these things together, and then we're gonna go ahead and see what we can get into next. We got our frame tacked up. It's pretty wobbly here. So that's okay though, because we're gonna try to make it so that we can use this still. Obviously I should have done this on like a metal table with like a square jig and everything bolted up, and then 4 of these instead of only 1 of them, and blah blah. Yeah, I'm trying to use the tools that I have, and like I keep saying, calculated weighing for the win. So let's go ahead and try to finish tacking all this stuff up, and then we're trying to get the gusset right here to go through the center of it to hold it straighter, to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and try to weld this the rest of the way up. Okay, so the rear subframe here is all welded up. I kind of just started winging it and say screw it, and I just welded it up. Obviously you're supposed to do it in a sequence so that it doesn't warp anymore, but it was already warped, so I just said screw it. So the rear subframe is all welded up. Now we're going to try to weld this gusset back together, and then we're going to cut it at the right angle that we need it to, and then weld that into there. And then we're going to weld our rear axle to the rear subframe here. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to weld it in 4 points, just right here, right there, on the other side, on both sides, and then the 2 corners on that side, and then on the other side of that. So if I ever do need to take it off, I can just kind of grind the welds off, and then we can just take it off and we can redo a rear subframe for it or something like that to get it so that it's actually straight and everything. So let's go ahead, keep doing what we need to do for today, and then we're going to go ahead and try to get this actually able to be into the rear subframe back there. And then we're going to try to get that rear motor mount, the rear motor mount, to be all mocked up today and welded on. And we're going to try to do that. That's that red piece that's right there. So let's go ahead and keep trying to do what we need to do. So now we got the rear subframe all welded up here. I grinded down so that it looks a little bit better. The rear axle was off, so we had to readjust it to get it to fit onto here properly. Now from this end of the bearing to the end of the shaft is 10.5 instead of 11. And that puts this more of in the center of the actual tubes here. So that's a little bit better for it. Like I said, I'm only going to do like 4 tacks around each side so that if I need to cut these off, I can and make a different subframe for it. Looks like the whole fam's here now.
Oh yeah. It's
so
gonna be sick when it's done.
I know.
I can't believe you made it this far, to be honest.
Really?
I'm stoked to see it finished now. You got an engine, you got a rear axle, like...
I gotta do some more stuff with the front, but it's gonna come out pretty sick.
It's looking sick on the ground.
I know, right? Just sitting there. So we're gonna weld this thing up now, and then we're gonna start notching the rear to be able to put this thing in there and get it to sit level. So let's go ahead and finish welding this stuff up. Okay, so now that the rear is all welded up, it's all welded together, the rear axle is welded to the rear chassis and stuff like that. Now we have to notch the rear frame back there to get the axle to sit into it. So let's go ahead and try to notch out what we need to, and then we can go ahead and try to fit that rear end into there. Original plan was to have it be a lot smaller in there so that it would actually fit inside the chassis so we could bolt it together, but that doesn't seem the case anymore. So we're gonna have to figure out another way how to get it to be mounted to the rear. Probably try to make tubular blocks that come up so we can mount it so that it still goes through the axle through the rear end there and bolt it up, but we have to start cutting and notching to get it to actually see what we need to do. There you go. That's actually a nice motor mount right there. So now we gotta do the same thing to the other side, and then we should be able to slip the motor in. I don't know what the heck happened over here.
You mean rear axle on that motor?
Whatever. I don't know what happened here. It looks like this piece was already like half cut, and it just kind of just fell off, so whatever. But let's go ahead and cut the other side now. Okay, so now the rear axle is in. We have to figure out how we're gonna bolt it up now. That's kind of the problem. And it looks like the rear axle is hitting the chassis, so I'm gonna need to cut a little bit higher into the back there to get it to actually sit right. So now the other problem is that the front is lower than the rear, which I don't want. I'm gonna have to figure out how to get the rear to sit a little bit lower so that we can actually have it do what it needs to do. And I want the whole thing to just sit level. That's the main point of it. I also might take that bracket out that goes in the bottom of the seat so that you sit back farther on the seat instead of having that as like a spring cushion. I'm just gonna probably put a piece of foam on the bottom and on the back so that it actually is like still buckety, but a little bit easier to sit on instead of sitting on some nuts and bolts and on a hard metal seat. So it seems like we got a lot done today. I'm going to try to figure out another little thing for the front, maybe to try to get the motor on. This might be about it. Let me see what I can do for the rear real quick though. So the motor's back on. The rear subframe is not bolted on, but it's still in the same position. We took the seat thing off that I said I was going to take off. It actually gave me two little springs that we can use for the motor mount. Now we're going to put those on the bottom, and then we'll put rubber up here to insulate it so that the motor can actually torque forward and do what it needs to do. Put the gas tank back on. We had that in the bed of the truck. And then what we got is this is like a for instance of how I want the front to be. So pretty low. I want this size wheel and tires set up, but I want it squared. So I want the rear to have the same size rim and tires set up all the way around. So I think that'd be pretty sick. But yeah, what do you think?
It looks cool.
Yeah?
I want to see it ripping.
It's going to be a little while for that, but the rear subframe still has to be adjusted so that it can sit better and so we can actually bolt it up. But
this is how low you want it? Like this?
Not the front, no.
Probably
No.
like an inch or two higher.
Yeah, if you hold this, I'll show you. So I want it to sit like
Right about right there.
Dang.
Yeah. So
You're going to be a low boy.
So in the back here too, the rear fenders don't like bolt up right here. So there's two holes in the back. I want to put a small little wing on the back.
Oh my God.
that would look cool though.
It would, right?
Yeah.
Like a little race tractor kind of thing. But I think it's going to look pretty sick once it's all put together. We need to get the hood for it too, so it is.
You know what? You're gonna have like a gear shifter,
Yeah,
like a stick.
yeah, like a sequential kind of thing.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
The clutch lever is going to be on the shifter. So it's just going to have one bar that comes off, and then it's going to have a lever with a shifter on it.
So this is a 250,
Yeah.
254 stroke. Obviously.
Yep.
Fast now? What are you going to do for brakes?
It's going to have a disc brake in the back.
Rear, yeah.
Yeah, just one though. If it's too sketchy, I'll try to get front brakes on it.
Yeah, you probably won't need it.
I mean, obviously with these big tires that I want to put on there, I'm going to have some like grip.
With
So
those big tires, you really, I mean, honestly, you don't really have too much business going over like 40, 50 miles an hour.
no,
So that's gonna feel
fast.
insane.
Yeah. So
My mower goes 17 miles an hour, and that's it. I'm
yeah.
not going any faster than that.
So
This thing's gonna rip.
yeah. What do you think? Do you think we could ever get this thing on the dyno?
You know what? If anything, you're gonna have a solid axle, right?
Yeah.
We could put it on the motorcycle dyno, one tire, because it's a locked in.
That would be so
Mm-hmm.
We'll just put it next to it, you know, like
On a stand with
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Just
You
some
try to
jack
figure it out.
stands.
That'd be pretty sick. So this is about it. But that's about it for this video, guys. It's really hot. I want to get some lunch and stuff like that. And I got to edit this video for you guys going up today. So that's about it. If you guys like the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, comment, share, do all the good stuff. And can't wait to see what this thing's going to look like later on.